Carry on.
Okay. I went back to some research, research from the University of Bristol. And in their sample of adoptive families with behavior problems, 17% had experienced the young person threatening a parent with a knife to control them.
Mm-hmm.
So let's imagine you were a young person who is prone to get angry and who has pulled a knife at me, okay? Or hit me. And now I'm assuming that because you've been traumatized, you get triggered. If I follow the metaphor to its conclusion, then I am characterizing you as a gun.
Yeah.
I'm characterizing you as inherently dangerous. Now, if instead I sit with you, as we do in NVR when we have sit-ins, or some people call them sit-with, I sit down with you, and you don't want me to, obviously, it's not comfortable. And I say to you, okay, Rachel, you've hit me. You threatened me with a knife. We're a peaceful family. You belong to us. We can't have this. So I'd like you to tell me what you're going to do so that it doesn't come to this again when you're feeling angry, because you will feel angry again in the future. Am I not communicating to you that I do not see you as inherently dangerous? That I see you as able to act in ways which are peaceful, even when you're upset or angry?
Mm. Yeah, I'm likely to I imagine that scenario and imagine the discomfort I would feel. Talking about the violence in that way. I think it's unlikely for me to think of something helpful perhaps in that moment. But I know that I would feel responsible by the way that you've described it. And my responses perhaps might be something I will hold and think about over the coming days.
Can I pick up on your use of the word responsible? Because I think that's key. So if I'm the parent and you're the young person and I give you that message, I'm holding you responsible. I am not holding you culpable. And perhaps when people feel one should not use the term violence, they are worried that we use that word to hold someone culpable as a judge, jury, police, the criminal justice system would. That's not our job. It's not our job. And as a matter of fact, nonviolent resistance is based on a number of principles, one of which is that it is absolutely non-punitive. We are not in the business of helping parents to hold their children culpable for past actions. We're in the business of helping parents to hold their children responsible for changing their behavior now.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it becomes very supportive, because I think at the end of the day, most young people do not like the fact that they act with violence. Perhaps that is why many young people don't like to hear the word violent. What you did was violent. This has got to change. Because they don't want to see themselves in that way. And I guess then there are two ways of helping the young person not to feel uncomfortable. One way is to simply not talk about it anymore, which means the young person continues to do it, and they don't feel as uncomfortable because it's not called out. The other possibility is for us to continue talking about it and for the young person to stop doing it. And that way, they relieve themselves of that discomfort. Because I'm assuming there is that positive voice in the young person. I'm assuming if you're, the young person who has hit me and taken a knife to me, when you think about it, when you are induced to think about it by my sitting in that room, part of you, a positive voice in you, feels this is not who I am. So I think it is the message, this is not who you are.
I imagine there could be some professionals listening to this podcast thinking, yeah, all well and good for teens, but what about if you're working with a 6-year-old? The language and holding them responsible for their harmful, violent behaviours, that kind of discourse, whether they understand intellectually this concept, this agency that the parents are developing in sitting with their young person and reminding them, and I think my answer to that is yes. That young people as young as 6 can understand the meanings, the parents' language, the parents' positions, holding the child. I think all this concept can be understood with young children too, as well as young people and adolescents.
Well, I think there's some practical ways of defining violent behavior. So if I'm angry at someone and I get closer to them than arm's length, and if my body language shows a readiness to hit or strike out, if my fists are clenched, if my if I'm squinting and making prolonged eye contact, then I am moving into the realm of violence. If I hit, if I cause physical pain, or as one of my sons once said, any form of unfriendly touching.
Yeah.
If I touch someone in an unfriendly way, and if I touch someone without their permission or consent, or if I touch someone who is not able to consent to being touched, all those forms of touch become violent.
Yeah.
If I throw an object at a person, even if it misses that person, and it's an object that could potentially hit and hurt that person, maybe I would probably accept cotton wool from that. But I'm speaking of a hard object, Or even if I hit a hard object throw a hard object in the direction of someone, then all these are acts of violence. By definition. They are not merely aggressive acts. Because if I'm angry and I go to my room and trash my room, that is an aggressive act, but it is not a violent act as such, because I'm protecting others from my own rage.
Yeah, choosing different outlet.
And we have to be able to make those distinctions in conversations with the young person. We have to be able, and of course it's not okay over time for a young person to trash their room. But the first time a young person trashes their room, if for many months or even years they have physically attacked their parents, is actually a step forward. And it is to be, it is not lauded as such, but, appreciated. We need to appreciate that young person has taken a step to controlling themselves.
Exception, isn't it?
Yeah. And while they may not yet be able to regulate themselves well, you cannot regulate yourself unless you control yourself first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what do we take from our conversation?
That we must talk about violence.
Well, yes, that we must talk about violence, but we must make sure, and perhaps we need to be very clear in our training of professionals, that we talk about violence, but not about violence as a trait in the young person, but as something they have done, something they have maybe been in the habit of doing, but one can break a habit.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the majority of professionals in our training do sit with that well, and that they can separate the child and the behaviour, and are very comfortable talking about violence to their parents that they're working with.
I was just thinking of a program on Radio 4 where at the end of the program, if you listen to the podcast, you always get some more material in their conversation. It's gone on. I've just thought of something that we hadn't spoken about. Is that okay if I just mention that?
Yeah.
Not only do I come across parents who are uncomfortable with using the term violence, I come across parents who feel relieved when that word is used. And I've had parents who've sort of almost whispered or said shamefully or guiltily, it feels like domestic violence.
Me too.
And there is a freedom of speech for them to express the position that they feel in, and the feelings that are associated with it. And I would not wish to deny parents that opportunity.
That's really, really important, isn't it? Really crucial to our work and moving forward.
Okay, so really the use of the word violence needs to be in an optimistic context.
Yeah.
When we don't work with violent young people, we work with young people who've been in the habit of using violence and who will stop now.
Who will stop now? That's the plan.
That's the plan.
Okey-doke. Wow. Interesting conversation, I'm sure, for listeners.